Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first History Talks of the 2025-2026 season. My name is Felicia Rova-Cameron, and I'm the Associate Curator for the Lacey Museum. I am joined by Museum Assistant Olivia Moore, who will be moderating the virtual part of the presentation from the back of the room. And joining us for tonight's program is Jarvis Harris and Joe Foss, who will share insights from their 5-week journey touring Black historical sites and landmarks across the United States. For those of you here in person, and if you haven't already, we'd really appreciate if you would sign in after the conclusion of tonight's program. This helps us get an accurate count of attendance. You can also use that form to sign up for a newsletter, which you can get any updates and events from the museum. Before we begin tonight's presentation, I would like to start with a land acknowledgement and some museum news. The Lacey Museum is on the ancestral land of the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek, including the Nisqually Indian Tribe and Squaxin Island Tribe. We acknowledge and remember those tribal people not recognized today who were absorbed or relocated into other tribes for survival. We recognize the ancestors and their descendants who are still here. We recognize and respect the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek as the traditional stewards of this land since time immemorial, and their role today in taking care of these lands in perpetuity. We recognize and have the responsibility to call attention to the histories of dispossession, forced removal, and abridged treaty rights that allowed our nation, state, and city to develop as they have today. We recommend that community members read the Medicine Creek Treaty of 1854. All right, everyone, we do have a special announcement coming next month. I can't spill the beans just yet. That is my update. But I can give you a hint. So stay tuned for our next History Talks program for this exciting announcement. Along with our big, super top secret announcement, we have some positions open if you want to get involved with the museum or historical commission. If you have any questions or are interested in applying to be a museum or research center volunteer, please email laceymuseum@cityoflacey.org for more info. The City of Lacey is recruiting for 2 vacancies on the Historical Commission. One is an unexpired term expiring September 13th, 2027, and the other is expiring September 13th, 2028. And if you have any questions about those, please contact the city clerk's office at cityclerk@cityoflacey.org. We hope you'll join us next month for our October History Talks with speaker LaToya Brackett for her presentation titled, "They Want Our Rhythm But Not Our Blues, African American Innovation Through Pop Culture." This presentation is part of the Humanities Washington Speakers Bureau programs. A note for this presentation, it will not be included in our recorded history talks and will not be available for viewing after the event. So we do encourage folks to watch that one live, either in person or online. So it won't be on the City of Lacey YouTube afterwards. Moving on to tonight's presentation, this History Talks program will run a little bit differently than we usually do. So some of you know we usually hold our Q&A session at the end, and this time we'll be holding more Q&A and conversation after the presentation with the speakers in the audience. And this is to encourage dialogue and reflection. We want this to be a safe space for learning and sharing experiences. For those of you in person, we will have you raise your hand and I will come around with a microphone so folks at home can hear your questions and comments as well. And then for folks online, feel free to submit questions and comments in the Q&A box, which is usually located on the bottom of your screen. Now I would like to introduce tonight's speakers, Jarvis Harris and Joe Foss. Jarvis Harris of Lacey is a retired U.S. Army veteran and former Pierce County Corrections officer who now dedicates his time to personal passions and volunteering. Born and raised in Philadelphia, he settled in Lacey during his Army service. Joe Foss of Tacoma is a Navy veteran and retired business owner who has been actively engaged in projects addressing racism in America since 2012. Thank you so much, Jarvis and Joe, for joining us tonight.
First, let me say thank you, welcome. I really appreciate everybody that's here today, and hope you enjoy yourself and learn some things.
Yeah, thanks to the Lacey Museum for inviting us and allowing us this time to share our journey that we hope you will enjoy and feel like you're a part of as we share the journey along the way. So we titled our journey the Black History USA Rail Tour because we primarily used Amtrak as our primary transportation means traveling around the country. And it was a 5-week journey, so it was quite a lengthy journey. And see if I can make this thing work. I wanted to introduce why am I interested in racial issues? Well, a couple things that really engaged me early on in racism issues in America. One of them is that my wife and I have our own diverse family with 2 children that don't look like us. This is our 4 kids here. And all of them were started from babies, so we raised them all. And they're all off on their own now and doing well. And then I had another, besides experiencing the 2 kids that don't look like us, they're from India, by the way, and we got them as infants. And we got to experience some interesting racism issues. We didn't recognize it as such, honestly. We were kind of ignorant white folks at that point in time, and kind of passed us by. But we had a wake-up moment one day when our youngest daughter, Jamie is her name on the far right there, Jamie came home one day from school, and she had what I would call a come to Jesus moment with mom and dad. And she insisted that we have this conversation, and she basically told my wife and I that we didn't have a clue about what was going on with her and her brother at school. So when they left our home, we weren't recognizing issues that were going on with them. So that was a big deal and put us on this journey in a way. And then in February of 2012, now 13 years ago, when Trayvon Martin was murdered, that one, for some reason, I felt like that one really got my attention. And I've been on this serious racism discovery journey since. So some of the materials that I've used and whatnot are on the table over there if you'd like to take a look after our presentation. Jarvis, you want to introduce yourself a little further?
Okay, I'm Jarvis. I'm married to the lovely Michelle Gibson sitting back here. We have a nice, large, blended family. We've been married it'll be 20 years next year. I've learned to say, yes, dear. I'm originally from Philadelphia, born and raised. I'm the youngest of 4 kids. I joined the military about 20, stayed in for 20 years because I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I'd figure that out in the 20 years, and it didn't happen. Retired here in Lacey, Washington, and transitioned over to law enforcement. Law enforcement corrections. In the military, I was military intelligence, so that doesn't mean a whole lot. It scares me now, though. Did the corrections thing and then retired, and I've been retired fully for the last 3 years. And while I was doing the retirement thing, I met Joe golfing. That's a whole nother story. But met Joe golfing. We weren't doing good. We were just golfing. Golfing is the other term for golfing is hunting for your ball. So I met Joe, and after we got to be friends for a little while, I told him I was thinking about taking this trip around the country. I like to travel a little bit, and I like museums. I like exploring those kind of things. So I told him, I said, hey, I'm thinking of taking this trip around the country. He's like, hey, you mind if I join you? And I'm like, okay. So we talked to the wives, and they had no interest in it. So we decided we were going to get together and plan out this trip. No, you didn't. We decided we were going to plan out this trip. And Amtrak has a great deal. Here's the plug for Amtrak. Amtrak does a rail tour. They do a rail ticket for $500, and you got 30 days to make 10 stops anywhere around the country. Yeah. See? Retire first and then do it.
So this was the piece that kind of left the wives out in a way, because neither of our wives would be comfortable with sort of going on a journey where you don't know where you're going to stay every night. We were both very comfortable with that. We figured that out every day, each day at a time. And so that was our planning process. We figured out a few things. Well, one of the things that came up that was really interesting was a friend of mine emailed me, since he knew we were going on this journey, and he said, "Hey, are you aware of the Buffalo Soldier Museum right there in Tacoma?"
Anybody else aware of that museum up there? Yeah.
So that really kind of piqued our attention. I called Jarvis. I said, "Hey, we don't have to travel anywhere. We can go see a Black History Museum." And Jarvis says, "I know where that is. I go by there on the way to work." He was familiar that it was there, but he'd never been there. So that kind of set the tone for us in terms of pivoting on the fly on this journey and being open to things as they developed and changed as we were traveling. So, by the way, really interesting place. It's very small, but
Packed with information.
we had a great time there. That's located on Wilkeson Street in Tacoma.
19th and Wilkerson. Get off at Sprague, make that first right at the light, and you're right there.
So this is some of the stats of our journey. This is the Amtrak network in the country. We use that as sort of like, okay, how are we going to get around and what lines do we need to get on and so forth. With 38 days on the road, 5 nights we slept on the coach, 16 nights we spent with family and friends, and 16 nights in hotels. We traveled a total of 6,800 miles, 4,600 miles on rail, 2,000 miles in a car, and we walked 200 miles. And that was
Walking was necessary because we did a lot of eating.
That's true. That was a fun part, though. So, Jarvis, you want to tell them about our first?
We kind of, like Joe said, we planned it out a little bit in the beginning. We decided to fly from here in Washington to a friend's house in Virginia. Johnny and his wife, Vern, took us in and let us stay there for a couple of days. And they actually graciously let us borrow their car to do the East Coast portion of our trip. So we stayed there, got some pretty good food, then jumped in their car. And when we left, we stayed there a day or two. Then we left there and went up to D.C. first. D.C. was the first museum we stopped at.
So that's coming up here. So I just wanted to highlight as well.
I met Johnny here, by the way, in Washington, in Lacey. He used to be a resident here.
Jarvis's connections around the country were second to none. I'm telling you, he's connected. And that was a really important aspect of this journey because he introduced me to his friends along the way, plus they ended up being places that we stayed. And so Johnny and Verna were our first hosts, and was really a great start to our journey. Now, this was before we got on a train. So we now have a car, and we're heading up the East Coast to do some stuff. We started out with the Jamestown settlement. These were things that were right there where they lived in Yorktown. So we got to see a couple things there. And then you want to take the...
And anybody else been to D.C., that National Museum there yet? If you get a chance, go and take at least 2 days.
If you only go to one Black History Museum, that's the one.
This museum is phenomenal. The thought that they put into this place was absolutely incredible. Joe, I'm not going to tell no crazy stories about him, but for some reason, Joe didn't charge his phone the night before. Who doesn't charge their phone at night? Anyway, we get to the museum, and I'm ready to get all started. And he's like, "Man, I ain't charged my phone." That sound like you got a problem. I'm going to check out the museum. But when you get to the museum, they have these charging stations. You just place your phone in it, absolutely free. Put your phone in there, put your own combination in, walk away, and your phone's charging. The food at this museum, yeah, that covered a good rib. I like to read. I like to pick up souvenirs and that kind of thing. You go to this, that's me up there in the souvenir shop with the books. So I'm thinking, man, how am I going to get these books I want? And we just started the trip. But the lady was like, oh yeah, if you pick out your books, you pick out your shirts, you pick out your souvenirs, we send it anywhere in the country you want for like $20, $25. Ooh-wee, hello, Michelle. Yeah, there's gonna be a couple packages arriving at the house. It was incredible. They have lockers, and if you have backpacks and all that, they were, oh my goodness. The museum is situated in the spot where you can see almost all of downtown D.C. from the museum. You can see the Washington Monument. You can see this, the strip that goes down. Was it yeah, all that, yeah. So we're there for the first day.
Oh, here it is, right here.
And we were outside. We were there for the first day, and you get full of all this emotion and all this kind of stuff and thing that you're seeing. The second day, Joe decided to call his wife, and I'm talking to somebody on the phone, and realized I was just overwhelmed by what I saw at the museum. The museum is incredible. Anyway, I think I get myself together, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have to hang up and go over to Joe and maybe talk some comedy and settle myself down. Joe was no help. Joe was talking to his wife on the phone, and when he turns around, I'm like, oh my goodness, he's been crying too. What is in the air?
That's
but
true.
They have this room upstairs. I don't know what the name of the room is, but there's no noise up there. You just hear this water coming down, and you hear the water going, and it absolutely cleanses you. It's like a spiritual cleansing when you walk into this room. Nobody's talking real loud. Nobody's doing nothing. There's nothing up there to really see. There's a couple quotes on the walls. You can see that from there. But absolutely cleanses your senses as you're up this. They thought of everything in this museum.
Yeah, so it's no wonder you've probably seen in the news recently that there is some pushback about the way certain things are presented there. It's a bit too woke for the current political environment that we got, I think. But those things shouldn't be determined by the White House. At least that's my opinion. That's what you're going to hear from me tonight. So the White House has no business being involved in that. And I hope that they're pushing back pretty hard, to be honest, so I'll be surprised if much changes, because the guy that's in charge of the Smithsonian, he seems to be a no-nonsense guy. He isn't just in charge of this museum, but all the Smithsonian museums. There's a bunch of them. And Bunch is his last name. And so far, it seems like he's been successful in pushing back. So we'll see how that comes out. I wanted to highlight another thing here that was interesting. So I became aware that Jarvis was a book nerd. But here he is reading to Frederick Douglass. Check it out.
Some things happened since he was here last. I was trying to update him.
You only seen that here, okay? So then we moved on from Washington, D.C. We went to Philadelphia. And
Moment of silence.
this was a special part of the journey, certainly for me, and I know for Jarvis as well. But I had been asking him questions over the years. We've known each other for about 10 years. I've been asking him questions about, his growing up years and different things about where he grew up, and talked about the projects and all that. Well, I sort of know what projects are, but I've never been to one. And so anyway, you can see standing in front of City Hall there. And then I want to highlight a couple of things that I was totally ignorant about. How many of you know what the word John means? How many of you know about the word scrapple? Okay, so for me, I'm just a West Coast kid that don't know nothing about any of this stuff. Anyway, so I'm pointing at this word here and I'm saying, what the heck? Somebody made that up. And well, it's probably true. But so I learned about that. Jarvis will have to explain what it is, because I don't know the dictionary definition of the word, but it kind of covers a lot of territory. And then scrapple, this is Jarvis eating some in the restaurant where we had breakfast that morning. And so that's a pretty popular dish in Philadelphia.
Absolutely.
And I did take a taste of it. It was good. I actually would order it. So anyway, we had a great time in Philadelphia, and I'll give you the second slide on this, and then Jarvis can share a little more. So this was probably the most meaningful part for me, was meeting his friends and neighborhood.
I'm from Philly. I haven't been back there in a while. Obviously, me and Joe were going in, and I said, hey, when we get down into my neighborhood, I don't want you to say nothing until I tell you it's okay. Right? Some of you, I know some of you have family that's from Philly, and you know what I'm talking about. So we go into the projects, we go down to Marshall Street. I'm from North Philly, by the way, which is a rough area. And when we pull up, we get out the car, and I see a couple people on the corner, and a couple of them look at us, and they start walking away. I'm like, all right, that's cool. And I go, I'm like, hey, I'm looking for Troy, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, yeah, okay. Troy lives down there. I know he lives down there. I'm just not sure which house. I ain't been around here in a while. And I'm talking. I said, I used to work in this shop right here. So one of the guys kind of recognizes me. He says, oh, you're the guy that used to make this cheesesteak. I'm like, yeah, that's me, Jarvis. So we're talking. Now these other guys that walked away, they come walking back. And they're like, oh, okay, what's up? You know, we start talking. So then Joe's allowed to talk now, because if you don't develop that relationship real quick, things can go south kind of bad, and quick. So I found out later they thought we were probation officers looking for Troy. And that's why they weren't trying to tell us where he lived. They weren't trying to give us none of the information. By the time we left, though, Joe had shared a beer with the fellas on the block. We were having a good time. Yeah, it was good. And that's the projects there. I don't know what Joe thinks the project is. It's a housing area. I grew up in Philly thinking everything was great. I didn't realize that the projects was a designated place for black folk to be. You weren't allowed to have a husband or a man in your life. He wasn't supposed to stay in the projects with you, none of that good stuff. It was intentional to bust up black families and that kind of thing. All right? That's my high school, Frederick Douglass High School. I'm sorry, Ben Franklin High School. I went to Frederick Douglass Elementary. So I thought I knew all I needed to know about black history, but I learned that I did not, obviously.
And then introduce your daughter here. We were in a restaurant with her and her kids that night, so.
So my daughter still lives back there just outside of Philadelphia. It's somewhat safer. And she's my oldest. She's probably about 44 now. And that's my great-grand in that picture there.
All right.
Down.
Actually, you know what? I want to say one more thing about this. For me, honestly,
That's family up in the top left.
looking at the whole trip, and it was a big journey for both of us. But this was the most meaningful part for me, because Jarvis was sharing something very personal that was meaningful to him. I got to be a part of it. I really got to understand some things about black culture that I wouldn't otherwise have gleaned out of this journey, honestly. So being with him and experiencing the projects and meeting some friends, I was absolutely amazed. So these folks that we all kind of connected up with, we literally are just walking a few blocks from Troy's home. This is his friend Troy. And we were just a few blocks we walked, and we walked on this street that, and pretty soon folks start kind of gathering. And this was old school in a way, because I don't have a place in my life that I could go back to where folks are still there that were there when I was a kid 50 years ago. That ain't happening in my life. But he was able to go back to a neighborhood where he still knows some people that are still there. That was really amazing to me and a really moving experience. So I just wanted to share that with you. Then we went on to down to Baltimore. And you want to share a little bit about those two places? These were two.
Put me on this trip. I don't know why he's making me do all this talking. So we go to the Blacks and Wax Museum in Baltimore. Just a side note, I've been there before. When I went there before, the museum was absolutely gorgeous. It was incredible. Right here, they have a ship you can actually, it's a replica of a slave ship. You can actually walk in, go down some stairs, and they have the compartments where they used to keep the slaves at when the ship was traveling. They had wax figures. Right now, they're in a state of restoration. They're trying to get money to put this museum back together, because it was kind of a shambles when we went there this time. When I went before, it was incredible. You could hear, when you walked into that ship, you could hear the creaking of a ship. They would have the sounds of people moaning and crying and screams and all kinds of other crazy things. It was almost overwhelming when you walked into this ship back then. They didn't have all that this time, but they still had some incredible exhibits in there. So I'm looking forward to going back and seeing it after its final product is back up.
What slide number are we on right now? Can you tell? Okay. So let's see.
We're still in Maryland.
Yeah. So we need to move along here. Okay, so this is where
I told you.
this is where our rail part of the journey began. So remember, the Amtrak USA Rail Pass is good for 30 days, and you get 10 stops. So we now have 30 days left. We had more than 30 days before, so getting the car from his friends was really helpful because we used up a week. And then we still had our full pass available. So our first deal was going from Williamsburg to D.C. So his friend Johnny dropped us off at Williamsburg. That was the start of our...
Anybody else been to D.C.'s train station? It's like a museum all by. That place is incredible.
That was the nicest. That was the nicest and largest train station that we were in the whole country. Honestly, it's spectacular. And Jarvis loved that African and pretty shop.
Don't sell yourself short, folks.
He's got a shopping bug in him that I did not know about, but it really showed up on this journey.
Raised with two sisters.
So you'll see a few pictures of us on the journey in the rail car. So this was one of the first ones I took, and then our stop when we got from D.C. we went to Georgia, and lots to see and do there, and we got there early on Sunday morning, and the motel we stayed in was right across the street from the train depot. So we went over to the motel, which we made the arrangements for, by the way, on the coach car. And we found this motel. It was right across the street. We go over there and check in. And I'm looking at my watch and saying, wait a minute, Ebenezer Baptist Church it was a Sunday. And I thought, man, we might be able to catch a service over there. So it was early enough where we were able to catch a Uber, and we went to Ebenezer, and Reverend Warnock was was there that day. He didn't preach that day, but he did lead the service. They had a guest preacher.
It was his 19th
But it was really
anniversary.
awesome, and so that was a great experience that we just
Absolutely.
happened to get in on. And then because the Baptist Church is right where the Martin Luther King National Historical Park is, we took that in, which was really great. And then over the next couple of days, we did Stone Mountain. That's another friend of Jarvis's. Stone Mountain, by the way, how many of you are familiar with that? Heard of Stone Mountain? Well, you know that the Confederate monuments has been a pretty big issue around the country about kind of taking them down in many cases. This one's going to be pretty tough. That's the size of 2 football fields that carving is in the side of that granite rock. You ain't taking that one down. And guess what? It's owned by the state of Georgia. It's in a state park. So they have a really interesting story, and I'll show you a video or a link to a video that I recommend you look at. When we left that night, and Jarvis was just reminding me, this was really a fun part of our journey. Almost every night, we're sitting in our hotel room, and our heads are just turning with all these things we've seen, experience we've had, and we're debriefing about this. Stone Mountain was like, what are they going to do with that, and how are they going to deal with it? Well, we found a video. It's 18 minutes. It's a really great video, and it covers both sides of the argument, so it isn't like really pointed too strongly. And it's really a great video. So we looked at that night. And anyway, that was a really great piece of our journey was being able to share every day what we saw with each other.
Like homework.
Yeah, and we had different opinions, needless to say, which was fine. I mean, we argue sometimes about things, and like family, and I appreciate that he's up for a good argument, and he holds his own well and is able to make his point. So we went to Morehouse College. That was the only HBCU that I've ever been to. That was really great. We got a great tour there. And then the only actual museum we went to there, it was called the Apex Museum. It's a kind of a boutique museum that was very different than anything we'd seen up till then. And I'll share a little bit with you about that in a bit here. And then we got back on the rails, headed to Tuscaloosa. You want to say anything more about Atlanta?
That was good. Good.
So
Wait, one more thing. I do. We did the trip. We started the end of September, and we were in October, so it was election time. All right? When we go into Reverend Warnock's church, Pastor Warnock's church, like with most black churches, they had a table set up for voter registration.
yeah, sorry, that I'd never seen that. I've only ever been to white churches, and we don't talk about politics. Well, the way they handled it there was really impressive to me. So they have the voter registration booth out in the lobby, but in addition to that, he introduced 2 or 3 candidates that were in the sanctuary, had them stand up and be recognized. He didn't say you should vote for these folks. He just introduced them and had them stand up. That would never have happened at any church I've ever been a part of.
But they did that at all churches.
But I really loved that aspect. I thought it was a really great way to handle this. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yep.
So we get to Tuscaloosa, another connection of Jarvis's, his friend Pierre,
My man.
and his wife Anna, which is in the picture over there to the right. And that was a really great deal because that's
Financial note, if you go to Alabama, don't go when they're having one of their games on the weekend.
Yeah, so there's too much to talk about. But
Our hotel was $75 a night
We stay
until
in
the
a-
weekend. Then it was $500.
we stayed in a Roadway Inn. It was in Tuscaloosa. Again, made the reservations kind of on the fly. Didn't look at all the details. It was affordable. So his friend Pierre had told us, he said, hey, it's game weekend, so the team's playing on Saturday. So he said, you better check and see what the deal is. So exactly right, I looked it up, and oh my gosh, it was like $79 or $80 per night for Wednesday night and Thursday night. Friday night and Saturday night were $560. So we checked out, and and Pierre invited us to come and stay at the house. So we got saved on that deal. But the most important thing in this part of the trip was what's called the legacy sites, which are in Montgomery. And I'll let Jarvis tell a little more about that because he's really connected with that. And that's where the calendars that were passed around came from.
If you haven't seen it, the calendars are here, just kind of pass them around. Take a look. Their theme is from enslavement to mass incarceration. They've gone around. They've done a project. These columns here, on each of those columns is a county from every state, different counties from every state, of where they've dug up the remains of people that were lynched or burned or killed in those areas. And they have a whole that picture does it no good. You walk around this almost spiral exhibit, and these columns, there's tons of them with names listed on them of the ones that they found. That doesn't even count the ones that they haven't found. Yeah, it's an incredible.
I think there's 4,000 lynchings represented in that site, and there's more yet to come. I mean, it's still an ongoing project. And so the legacy sites are all in Montgomery. There's 3 of them. The National Memorial for Peace and Justice, that's where the lynching site is. the Legacy Museum, which is kind of the primary place, and then the Freedom Monument Sculpture Park. Those three, if you do one museum, you go to the Smithsonian in Washington. If you can get to a second place, this is number two.
Absolutely.
This was absolutely incredible, and that's another 2-day thing to do because you got to give yourself time to really take it in.
Absolutely.
Before we ran out of time, I wanted to make sure to include these two things. We all have preconceptions about our thoughts about various things from history and whatnot. A couple things that Jarvis and I think we shared kind of in these ideas that kind of came to us. One of them, and we saw this map in a couple of the locations, the Legacy site and also in D.C. I always thought that the transatlantic slave trade mostly came to America. Just my ignorance. Turns out there's estimated about 12 million slaves that were a part of the transatlantic slave trade. About 400,000 they're estimating is what came to the colonies. 12 million was the big number. 50% of those went to Brazil. And a big chunk went to the Caribbean islands, some of the Caribbean islands. So it's interesting, the U.S. actually didn't see the majority of the transatlantic slave trade, which I always thought. So I don't know if you want to share some other about that.
That doesn't count the ones that they lost
Yeah.
in getting to those places. All right, so our oceans are full of our ancestors.
They estimated, if I remember right, they were estimating that there was about 2 million
I forget the number, yeah.
that they thought were either thrown overboard or died on the journey or whatever. So the 12 million, I believe they said, was those that actually made the journey. So it was a pretty incredible thing.
Because he mentioned that we might be running low on time. One of my things is racism and slavery and all this history that we're talking about is like a scar that we have in our country, all right? All of us have some scars somewhere on our bodies, all right? It's not a bad thing. It just means you've been through some things. You've had some trauma, all right? It doesn't make you ugly. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you anything negative. You learn from those scars. To erase those scars and pretend they didn't happen is kind of dumb, all right? You're going to mess around. You or your kids or somebody behind you is going to make that same mistake again. But if you talk about that scar and you heal from it, and it takes all of us to heal from it, we'll be better people. But we keep farting around with this stupid racism stuff. And now it's become it's like a COVID infection in our country. And we're watching it now be manifested and growing and just getting worse and worse. And we're looking at it instead of, I'm not saying all of us are looking at it and not doing anything, but it's going to take us to solve that, to fix it. Because they don't think it's a problem. But we know it's a problem. So we have to be the solution. We have to go out and be willing to talk the ugly talk, they talk about the elephant in the room, tell them there's an elephant in the room. Talk about it. Don't ignore it. If you hear somebody saying something derogatory about it, then say, hey, we shouldn't be talking like that. We're America. This is America. I should love all Americans. And then they got the nerve to try to throw God into it. I'm not even going to go that route. I'm not. You search your own spirits and you do your own thing. But I'm pretty sure God is saying, yeah, you better get yourself together.
One of the other preconception that was kind of blown apart for us was when we walked into this Apex Museum, because of the way they had curated the space, this sign was right at the beginning. This fellow was I believe Hilliard was one of the founders of that particular museum. It's also a boutique museum, quite small, but they had a powerful message there. This was right at the door, and that really caught our attention. Again, preconceptions. We just don't think about what went before. So never let them begin our history with slavery, talking about black folks. That was a really powerful statement to read and try to understand that came to us at that museum. That hadn't been said anywhere else we'd been. We didn't see that or hear anything like that at the Smithsonian or the other places. So it was a kind of a unique element that they were focusing on that we thought was really powerful.
I remember part of my growing up, I thought they were catching, I might have been told this somewhere, they were catching the savages over in Africa. They were catching these people that were kind of primitive, and they were bringing them to someplace better and showing them a better life. Then you get older and you start learning or you start reading and find out these people had kingdoms. They had riches, they had families, they had civilizations over there. So don't let them tell you that our history started here in America. It did not.
Yeah, and there's thousands of years of it, by the way. So way before America even was an idea. So anyway, that was really important pieces that we picked up. This is the links, and I'm sorry, you can get this from us later. I didn't put that, but the YouTube titled Monument, The Untold Story of Stone Mountain, you got to see that. That 18-minute video is really great. And then this feature-length movie, if you haven't seen it, called Just Mercy, that's about the founder of the Equal Justice Initiative. And I believe his name is Stevenson. Brian Stevenson, yeah. So this movie is about him. If you haven't seen that movie, you got to see that. It's really a powerful movie.
As you learn things, as you see things, as you look at these things, share them with other people. That's how we grow. That's how we learn. On our trip, another one of the highlights was almost all the people we ran into were excited, encouraging, and supportive of what we were doing. And we thought we were just going out, checking out museums because we like checking out museums. But now we're doing these talks, and this is just incredible to me. So I love you. I appreciate you for being here.
So I'm thinking I'm going to jump ahead a bit here. So how much time do we have? Okay.
You haven't been there, go.
So here's some other things that, so
If
when
you
you're
haven't been to Dunkin' Donuts, go.
when you're staying in hotel rooms and places with somebody for 5 weeks, you get to find out some things. And Jarvis and I have been friends for 10 years, but not like staying in the same room for 5 weeks. So this kind of stuff right here, this was also something kind of new to me. Now, it isn't that he just likes Dunkin' Donuts. He likes specific kind of Dunkin' Donut. And if they're out of that one, you go to a different Dunkin' Donuts to try to find it. And we did that in Philadelphia and a couple other places. So I couldn't resist the idea of taking this picture. I just thought it was really great. So
Vanilla cream.
Vanilla cream, that's his deal. This was one of the biggest pivots that we did, where we were planning on going somewhere else, and we ended up renting a car in Tuscaloosa and drove to Nashville. This was not on our itinerary, but we had been told that this African American music museum was a really great place. We got some great referrals on that. So we thought, okay, let's do that. So we rented a car and we drove there. And we spent, I think it was 1 night or 2 nights in Nashville. And we went and spent all day at this National Museum of African American Music. Awesome place. That was so fun.
This picture right here, they give you you get a bracelet with $5 or something?
Yeah, a little bit
$5
extra.
for a bracelet. When you go to that machine, it'll say Stevie Wonder in the center. So you tap it, and 3 songs from Stevie Wonder downloads onto your bracelet. It'll have 6 people that influence Stevie Wonder. You tap it on any one of those, you get 3 songs from them. You got 6 people that Stevie Wonder influence. You tap it on there, you get 3 songs from each. You got your own playlist for $5. This museum was incredible. And they give you the journey from slave hymnals and songs all the way through the rock and roll. We have influenced, if we don't do nothing else in this country, we have influenced the music here beyond anything you can imagine.
Yeah, and this museum highlights that. So again, for me, I think Jarvis was
Stay there all day.
he was more savvy about this. But for me, that was really interesting to see the connection between what the slaves brought with them, and of course, it was they didn't have anything written down. It was all in their soul, and so that how that came later into jazz and blues and other genres that we now enjoy today. So anyway, this was a really great spot, and then we drove from there to Memphis to get back on the train, and we turned our rental car in there. In Memphis, we didn't spend a night. We just were there for the day. We went to the Lorraine Motel where the National Civil Rights Museum is. That was a really great spot. And we got kind of a weird deal that happened to us in Memphis because, as you can see, the hours on the train station there. So it doesn't open up till 4:30 a.m. So we had to kill a bunch of time because we didn't want to rent a motel room and then get up, and we were only there for a few hours. So we ended up, it was very strange. They would not let us just hang out in the lobby of this place that we were, which was part of the train station. They wouldn't let us hang out there. So we ended up going outside, and it was kind of cold, and we got our packs and our and stuff. And we started walking around for a while, and I told Jarvis, I said, this ain't working for me. So let's take a Uber over to the airport where we at least can be inside the terminal. Because here it was closed until 4:30 a.m. So we took an Uber to the airport in Memphis, and spent several hours in the airport just kind of hanging out. And then took an Uber back to the train station to get on at really early in the morning. And then Jarvis got his coffee, on the train. That was a really cool feature, by the way, on Amtrak, is the observation cars. Wow. Watch America go by right in front of you. It was an awesome thing. And you can get, coffee and snacks and drinks and stuff. And so we really enjoyed our time in the observation cars. And then you can follow on your phone. You can use Google Maps and actually follow where you're at on the journey from Memphis down to New Orleans there. So that was a 9-hour trip. And then we get to New Orleans. Too much to go over here. It was a lot to see there. There wasn't a lot of Black history stuff to see there, to be honest. I was a little disappointed in that, but there was two places that were specifically Black history. One was a small museum, and then we went to the Whitney Plantation. That was a one-day thing where it was about an hour bus ride out of New Orleans, and we spent several hours at the plantation. This was a working plantation that's still quite intact. It's a museum, and it was a really awesome thing to see. You can see Jarvis here. This was the only picture I put in for that, but he's inside of what was a kind of a jail, I guess.
They would bring the slaves here and put them in these cages, and these cages are outside. So when we went, it was October, but you go in that. I was in there by myself, obviously, and it was hot. And they would pack as many as could fit in there, men, women, and children. That whole thing is metal. Pack them in there. There's no bathroom in there. You just pack them in, lock them up, and wait for them to go out and be sold somewhere. That was ridiculous, yeah.
So anyway, New Orleans is a really fun place. We had a great time there. Went to several parks, the Sculpture Garden, which is in the city park. That was really a cool spot. This is a picture of Jarvis right here at one of the sculptures. I couldn't resist that shot because that sculpture shows people stacked up, and I thought, oh, well, Jarvis is the bottom of the stack. That's good.
Support.
And then leaving New Orleans, this is just one example of kind of the days that we did. So that was one of the days in New Orleans. We did 7 miles of walking that day. And this was Jarvis's store. He didn't know he had one, but here's Harris Antiques there on Bourbon Street. And so then we're back on the train and headed to San Antonio. Now, this is sort of on our way home, although it's a long journey getting home from here. But Jarvis's other daughter, Mercedes, lives in Austin. So we went to San Antonio. She picked us up there in San Antonio and then drove us back to Austin, which is where we stayed, and then spent some time with her. And we did our last Black History. This, honestly, this here, Terry's Black's Barbecue in Austin, Texas, that was the best barbecue I've ever had. I don't know about Jarvis. He's probably had more, but it was really great. And then, Jarvis, you want to tell him a little bit about this fellow you met at the train station? Jarvis, he makes friends everywhere, as you all know. And so we connected with a lot of interesting folks, and this was one of them.
I forgot his name, but he asked us about our hats or something when we started the conversation. I knew that. We started a conversation at the train station. He's like black Puerto Rican or black.
Yeah, Puerto Rican, I think.
Yeah, Puerto Rican, and he's got a tattoo on his arm that has the American flag and the Puerto Rican flag, and we got to talking and sharing stuff, and yeah, we had a great time.
So, by the way, that's also one of the places where a fair amount of the transatlantic slave trade went. Right, he probably has relatives from the country he's from that came from the slave trade. That was my guess. So here we are on our way home. The final Amtrak segments from San Antonio, then we go to Maricopa, Arizona. That was a 20-hour ride. Visited my kids in Gilbert, Arizona. This is my daughter's house, and Jarvis and I sharing dinner there at my daughter's house. This is us leaving. We stayed in the guest house that my daughter Emily has on her property there. And then Jarvis got a chance to meet a donkey.
That was the only ass on the trip.
And then as we went up the coast, we got to go to the Golden Gate Bridge. And I think that's the first time Jarvis had been there and seen that in person. So we got a good shot there. And then this is my sister and her husband in San Mateo that we visited there. And then this is me back at Amtrak in Tacoma. And then let's see, I'll close with, here's a saying that came to me in 2020 when I did a podcast, which is on our website, by the way. So Jarvis was on 2 of the podcast episodes that we did. And those are on our acceptingothers.com website. You can get a card over here for that if you want, and there's buttons if you'd like to help yourself to one of those. Okay, so here's our website, and just scroll down just a little bit. So this is, if you want to contact us about doing a program or anything, you can do that using that link. And then here is, go down a little bit more. There you go. So these are the 20 articles that Jarvis and I wrote for the Jolt local paper. We wrote these in February during Black History Month. And so if you want to see that series of 20 articles, you can just go right at the top of our website and see all of them in order. And that gives you a little more detail about each of our stops and all of that. And then go down a little bit further. And here's the podcast episodes, and there's 19 of them total. Jarvis was on 2 of them, so I did a podcast in 2020, and I couldn't keep it going because it was just so much work. I did it all by myself. And but I think you would particularly enjoy Jarvis's. There's 2 episodes that have Jarvis on them, and so that might be of interest to you. And then if
there's
you go down,
17 others. Check those out.
Go down a little further. So this was one of our other episodes that we did away from my house. That was recorded at Highlands Golf Course in Tacoma, and And then there's a few references to some books and things that have been helpful to me to better understand racism and such. And some of that's on the table over there. And a few videos and stuff. So I don't have the links on here yet. I need to add those for those two other things. But some of this might be interesting to some of you to watch. So you want to share anything further?
Nope. Do we still have time for questions or? Okay. Thank you again, folks.
Thank you.
All right, folks. So we are going to move into the discussion part of this program. So you can ask any questions, or if there's anything you would like to share, please raise your hand. I'll bring around the microphone. And then folks at home, again, you can comment in the box, the Q&A box, which should be at the bottom of your screen.
Can you put us back on the presentation, please? Thank you.
Well, to start, because it wasn't said, Jarvis, what is the definition of John?
A John is any person, place, or thing. So if I'm talking about something, I can say, this John right here is nice. All right, or look at this John over here. I don't know why he can't grasp that.
Oh, I kind of got it.
Probably have to eat some scrapple first. Yeah. Oh, this John is good.
All righty, folks. Anyone in the audience?
I love that you were willing to pivot so quickly, and I'm wondering if you had a budget that you had given yourselves that you tried to stay in, or you just kind of went with, we spend what we spend.
Yeah, that was. It was really pretty much the latter. It was just whatever. So we had the plane tickets and the Amtrak, but of course the hotel rooms and the food and all that. I don't remember the total, but yeah. We split everything 50-50, and I think it was a few $1,000s each. I don't remember the exact total, but yeah. It wasn't something that we tried to be really tight on that. Hang on for the mic here.
I want to know, in Alabama, did you find your name? I saw the picture when you were up there. You didn't talk about your name. Can you go back there and let them know?
In Alabama at the EJI Museum, they They have, you can trace your ancestral history. It was down that day. So you just go to that wall that they have there. And most of those museums, like the one in D.C. and this one here, the tour guides go through some serious training. They're just not going, yeah, that's over there. They'll take you through and take you by the hand and when you look at that wall from where I was standing, I was like, I'm supposed to find Harris up there? No. And she was like, oh, it's right. And we walked right over to it. So if you look up there, it has Harris. There was something wrong with it that day. I forget what it was, but so you can go inside and they'll allow you to search and do some things to find out stuff about your ancestral history.
At the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C., you said that was the one to go to for sure. And you talked about that space that was cleansing for you and you needed that space. What else about that museum was really critical for you? Give 2 or 3 things that were most important.
For that part, I liked how they took care of the people that came to the museum. It's like they knew what you were going to need when you got there. So all of your needs were kind of met. You don't have to leave the museum for anything. There's seating, comfortable seating around. They give you a little map, which if you're not military or Marine, you're not going to understand the map. But you can walk through, and they have people all over that teach you things, that show you things, direct you to different places. I told you about the souvenir shop. The cleansing room is what I called it. Just everything about the museum itself made you feel like they thought about you when you got there. The food, the restrooms were absolutely clean. Everything about the place was just incredible.
Yeah, so the term curated was used a lot, of course, in museums. That's the term. And I don't use that term regularly, but I came to realize that was so well done at many of the places we went, but specifically there. So you started in the basement, and you kind of wound your way up in sort of a circular path.
And they had a ramp. You
Yeah.
didn't have to do stairs.
There was no stairs.
They had a ramp that went around the whole thing. And they had benches all over the place. If you were older, if you just had a handicap or something, you wanted to sit down, they had that. As you're going up certain ramps, you could stop. There were bench sections, and they were showing videos and movies of other events in our history that you could sit right there and watch while you were waiting for somebody or anything, yeah.
One of the things that we also realized about each other that was kind of unique, although our friendship had been going for quite some time, we hadn't talked about museums and those kind of things particularly. Well, with my wife and I, when we've been to museums, generally, she's sitting at the end of the aisle waiting for me because I'm reading everything and I want to take it all in. And so Jarvis and I are talking. This was before the journey. We're talking, and he goes, "Tell me that again?" And he says, "Oh, I know about that." And so we realized right away that both of us were really interested in literally taking in everything we could see. And that was an awesome part of this because, I mean, we literally took our time and read as much as we could, watched all the videos, all of that. And that particular museum in D.C., it's hard, honestly, to even explain because it's so comprehensive and so well curated, and you just get kind of drawn in to the history because of the way they've put it together, which I think is the ideal goal with a museum, right? You want the folks to sort of feel the history, and you definitely did there.
But my 2 cents to that too. You have to remember too, in the creation of that museum, the founders put together all the Black anthropologists around our country and some international. They came together for over a year to put together this museum. So why is it so well put together? Because the best minds in our country that study Black history, specifically Black anthropologists, created this. So.
Yeah, and that shows in a big way. It really did. It really stood out. So.
I have a couple of questions online. Is that okay to do one?
Go ahead and take one online and we'll get one in person afterwards.
Somebody is asking, did you meet and talk with any other locals who are not relatives of yours?
Could you say that again, please?
Did you meet and talk with locals who are not your relatives? I know you mentioned that one guy at the train station, but was there anyone else that you...
Well, so we wore the hats are over there, you can see. We each had a hat that said Black History USA Rail Tour on it. We wore those hats a lot of the times, particularly while we were on the train, but also when we were in public. Many people would come up to us and want to know, what is this? You know, how can we find out more about this? Well, it was just the two of us. It was, so it wasn't this big operation. But in any case, that created conversation. So yeah, that was a really fun part of the journey for sure.
I forgot, we were in, I don't even remember where we were at.
Nashville,
That group
we were
with the
upstairs.
ladies.
Yeah, we were upstairs. Okay. In Nashville, we were in a food court that was on a second floor. We were sitting at this really long table, and we'd gotten our food. We sit down, And then a whole group of ladies kind of joined us that were together. And they saw, I think they were attracted to Jarvis, but anyway, they saw our hats, and that created this conversation. And we ended up handing out cards to them, which was something that we also did along the way, and shared pins, which you can help yourself to also. So there was just many opportunities that we had to engage with other folks. It was really fun.
So my question is for both of you, and in one of the last slides, you were describing how many white people do not have black friends, but many black people have lots of white friends. Was there because the two of you met like on a golf course about 10 years ago, was there a pivot moment in that kind of emerging friendship where you kind of got each other, or where, where you really connected?
I think it was on the third hole. No, I can't say for
but
sure.
What was it, I guess, maybe? What was there a conversation?
When I met Jarvis, so if you say 10 years ago, that would have been about 2015. My active racism journey of discovery started in 2012. I already had done a fair amount of research and stuff, so I was looking for a more connected, I was looking to connect with black people more directly. So he's walking up with his golf cart, and my brother and I were standing on the tee box. I said, hey, why don't you join us? And he wasn't really game for that at first, but we talked him into it. And we became friends that day on the golf course. And then I was doing the podcast then, and I said, hey, I'd like you, well, he didn't know anything about a podcast. And I said, well, it's cool, it's not difficult. I said, just come, we'll talk, we'll just talk. And I was the host of the podcast, but what I tried to do, because I called the podcast at the time My Awakening Podcast, was My Awakening Podcast. I was inviting black guests into my home, many of them people that I had just met, to share their lived experience with me and my listeners on this podcast.
Not always recommended.
And so I just would ask questions, and then Jarvis would tell, and this was true for my other guests as well. So I would say we connected pretty quickly on the whole idea of that we were in the same place about racism, and realizing that it was a problem nationally, and that we could be sort of a small answer to that. Sort of our friendship could represent what's possible. And I came to understand this piece that you mentioned, which was basically this. We have this huge disparity in understanding each other's cultures. That's the problem. And the biggest part of that is most black people understand white culture quite well, because they have many white friends. Not surprising when you consider that 13% of America is roughly the black population. So with whites being the majority, it's not surprising that blacks have way more white friends. But it's incumbent on us white folk to try to make a better connection so that we have more than just a few, if any, black friends, which is kind of the way it is, so that we can better understand their culture. And as a result of that, we have better understanding of each other. And I've been blessed, honestly, with his friendship in that way, in a huge, huge way.
And I think, to add to that, sometimes you're going to make mistakes. You're gonna say something, or you're gonna do something, and you can't be scared to make mistakes. You have to just get out there and be a little vulnerable at times, and do what is necessary to try to make those friends, to make those connections, to learn from the mistakes that we've made. So, yeah.
Essentially, no stupid questions. It's okay. And we've had conversations where I probably challenged him a little more, and he's at times had to kind of help me realize, maybe you need to dial that back a little bit. So.
You traveled through the South, Tuscaloosa, New Orleans and different places. Did you experience any prejudice or discrimination down there by either traveling together or individually by traveling with each other?
That's a good question. What did you notice on that?
So once I don't know if you were there that day. Once I was down in the food court ordering some food, and I had my hat on, and there was the black guy that worked down there.
Yeah.
We got on the train several times, and actually this one black guy, we saw him twice on the trip. He worked on the train. But I'm talking to him about some stuff one day, and this other white guy walked up, and he started, be honest, he started talking about Trump, and like, blah, this and that and the other. So I was like, all right. I say, I'm going to take off, and I'll come back and talk to you later. So he was like, all right. So I left, let the guy have that space, talk about whatever you want to talk about. And when I came back later, it was kind of understood this guy was just looking to argue about something dumb and have dumb conversation. I'm not trying to do that. I like to have good days every day. I can argue with you if I want to, but that just wasn't something I wanted to do. It ruined my whole day, mess things up. So yeah, you're gonna have those, and I've kind of learned to. Sometimes I can walk away and leave it alone. Other times, I don't listen to my wife's voice and I say something back.
I didn't sense, honestly, I'm kind of, well, I think Jarvis can attest to this. I was probably kind of oblivious, if I was to be really honest. I was oblivious to my surroundings. He's more situationally aware because of his growing up experience. I'm not sure I could say that's a black culture thing. I don't know, but in his case, there was more than one time that on this journey that he reminded me that I should be more situationally aware of what's going on around me. Times where he felt like maybe I was putting myself in a little bit of danger or something. Again, I grew up in West Tacoma in a small town called Fircrest. It was a white bubble. I moved there in 1956, and I spent my whole life in Tacoma. But I lived in a white bubble pretty much most of my life until we adopted 2 darker children. And that started opening up that experience for us. And then I later became more aware through some of these interactions that were happening in the country. So that has really opened things up for me. I don't use the word woke, but I would say I'm awakening. I definitely am, and I'm proud of that. And I would encourage other white folks to be more awakening and to do what you can to research what you need to, have conversations, look at videos, get books or whatever. There's all kinds of resources. And but the thing that trumps them all, not to use that term wrong, but the thing that trumps them all is having a black friend. Jarvis's friendship with me is really precious to me. And honestly has been a true blessing. So that, if you can find a black friend, those of you who are white, I mean a good black friend that you can have fun with and have good conversations with and serious conversations with, that's what we need to do.
There was a guy we were still with Johnny. He pulled around one day, we were trying to find a museum, and I had on a hat that had a flag on it. And he had on a hat that said, "Make America Great Again," with a flag on it. Right. And Johnny's black, I'm black, and Joe was there. But the guy rode right over to me. He was like, "Hey," and he started asking me direct. I was like, I don't know where you're going. The museum's right here. But he even rode around, and when he got to the museum, he kept wanting to get out the vehicle and come talk to me. And I was like, why is this guy talking? And then I remembered, there's a flag on my hat. All right, which is weird because then we had a conversation. I had a conversation with Joe. How many of you When you see pickup trucks with flags on the back, you think that's pretty patriotic. Right. Well, I've got friends that thought, yeah, that's pretty. I'm like, no, it's not. They've turned the flag into a thing to try to threaten black folk or other nationalities. Kind of a weapon. I met a lady somewhere else, and she saw the flag on my hat, and she thought, I'm like, nope, that's not me. I'm wearing a flag because I'm an American citizen, and I'm proud of America, or I'm a proud American the way we used to be, the way in the direction I thought we were going in. Right now, I'm questioning a lot of things. She was like, I said, what made you think I was a Trump supporter? She's like, I saw the flag. I'm like, what? The flag is for America. And we have to stop letting them steal some of our symbols and make it theirs. It's not. We're Americans. I'm going to put a flag outside my house. If they get confused, I'll just tell them, you're confused. There's nothing here for you. Go down the street somewhere.
It's a struggle, a challenge in that we're all Americans, but we have a different culture. This is tricky.
Well, I can tell you, I go to a very diverse church in Tacoma, a place called Zion's River, and we have a large, a pretty diverse, very diverse congregation, actually. But in general, even though we're sitting together in the sanctuary, I won't say that we really know each other. Not untypical at most churches, white, black, or otherwise. You don't necessarily connect up with everybody in that room. But so I find it interesting that, you've all probably heard it said that our most segregated time of every week is Sunday mornings. That's probably still true. But it's challenging to sort of bridge the divide, I guess, in a way, and understand the culture. But I think the only way is to get to know people individually and actually have them over to your home, go have dinner together, do some things. That's the sort of thing I guess I'm kind of trying to encourage.
I want to say, if you let people know that you're trying to learn, you're trying to be better, to make everything around you better, then people should be understanding of that. And I'm not trying to get up on the altar or nothing, but if you pray about it first and let God lead you in those ways, do it that way. You can't fail with God. All right. Don't want to be. Go ahead.
All right. I think we have time for one more.
No, we don't. No.
I don't have a question. I'm going to chastise my husband for calling me out in the middle of this presentation. Thank you. However, what I want to share is from the position of a spouse experiencing this vicariously through these two gentlemen. It's been interesting to watch the different approach, reactions to how they've experienced not just, the beginning of before the journey and especially this 5-week journey, which, gave me a rest, but also, I don't think that I know the way they deliver the presentation, but I also know how I hear my husband talk about it when it's just the two of us, and this doesn't do it enough. It doesn't give you the juice, the passion, what they really felt. It's like you have to go through these slides, but there has been so much emotion in listening to him talk about his history. I'm a foreigner, so I really don't have, but also of the African diaspora, but be able to watch him connect to his history, to watch Joe, to watch them build that bridge that we're kind of hoping that people having a shared story or whatever it is that will get us to the better place. And now I'm getting emotional, so sorry.
Well, sorry if we didn't include enough emotion in the process, but guys aren't so good at that part, maybe. Thank you. I received that.
All right, folks, so that is going to conclude tonight's program. Can we get a round of applause for Jarvis and Joe again? Thank you guys so much for your presentation tonight.